Before we talk about changing the world, fixing your life, or becoming a better version of yourself, there is one uncomfortable question that almost no one wants to face. What if the biggest reason you feel lost, rushed, anxious, or unfulfilled is not because you lack discipline, motivation, or knowledge, but because you are never actually here? Not emotionally, not mentally, not even experientially. You are present in body, but absent in awareness. And as long as that remains true, every solution you chase will quietly fail, no matter how impressive it sounds. Most people believe they are constantly experiencing reality, but in truth, they are almost always experiencing their thoughts about reality. This difference seems subtle, almost philosophical, but it is the difference between being alive and merely narrating life in your head. The modern world rewards constant thinking, constant planning, constant noise. Silence is treated as empty, unproductive, even frightening. But what if silence is not the absence of something, but the doorway to what you've been missing your entire life? There is a mistake many people make when they hear the word silence. They imagine a dramatic, forced stillness, like the awkward pause after bad news, where everyone pretends to be serious, while their mind races louder than ever. That kind of silence changes nothing. Real silence is not about stopping sound. It is about stopping the inner commentary that never gives you a moment of rest. The voice that explains, judges, compares, and rehearses. As long as that voice dominates, you are never in contact with reality itself. You are only in contact with descriptions. This leads to the first major misunderstanding that shapes almost everything else in life. People assume reality is something you can fully explain. They argue endlessly about whether the world is material or spiritual, physical or mental, mechanical or divine. But these are not discoveries. They are concepts, words arranged into systems. Reality itself is not a theory. It does not need agreement. It does not require belief. It simply is. And the moment you stop confusing words for what they point to, many of your deepest illusions begin to collapse. One of the clearest examples of this confusion is money. Money feels powerful. It feels real. It shapes decisions, relationships, and entire nations. But money itself is not wealth. It is a symbol, a measuring tool, like inches or grams. You cannot eat it. You cannot breathe it. You cannot feel warmth or companionship from it. On its own, it does nothing. Yet millions of people quietly replace real wealth with its symbol. They sacrifice health, time, relationships, and inner peace to accumulate numbers that represent something they no longer have time to enjoy. This mistake runs deeper than economics. It reveals a psychological habit of choosing symbols over substance, menus over meals, status over satisfaction, accumulation over experience. Even if you owned 5 houses, you could only live in one at a time. Even if you owned 10 cars, you could only drive one. Life is limited by experience, not by possession. But the mind does not understand this. The mind hoards symbols and mistakes them for fulfillment. The same confusion appears when people think about who they are. Most individuals live their entire lives as an idea of themselves, rather than as the living organism they actually are. They identify with labels, roles, reputations, and stories that were given to them long before they had the awareness to question them. Personality becomes a prison rather than a tool. Ego becomes something to protect rather than something to observe. This is why fear of death often hides a much stranger fear beneath it. Many people are not afraid of not existing. They are afraid of what others will say about them once they are gone. They fear judgment continuing without them present to defend the image they work so hard to maintain. This reveals something crucial. The self they are afraid of losing was never truly theirs. It was a reflection maintained through other people's perceptions. And anything that exists only through approval was never solid to begin with. Another deeply ingrained illusion is time. People constantly say they have no time, as if time were something that can be owned, stored, or lost like an object. Watches and calendars reinforce this illusion by slicing time into units, making the present feel like a razor-thin line between past and future. But this idea is completely backwards. The present is not a fleeting point. It is the only place anything has ever happened. The past does not exist as a place you can return to. The future does not exist as a destination waiting for you. They exist only as thoughts appearing now. Memories are experienced now. Anticipation is experienced now. There has never been a moment in your life where you were not in the present, even when you believed you were trapped elsewhere. The tragedy is not that time passes. The tragedy is that attention is rarely here when life is. This misunderstanding creates another habit that quietly destroys responsibility and freedom. People believe they are products of the past, that their actions are determined by childhood, upbringing, trauma, or circumstance. These things matter, but not in the way people think. The past does not push you forward like an engine. It follows behind you like the wake of a ship. The present moment is always the point of creation. Blame thrives in this confusion. Responsibility is endlessly passed backward. Parents blame their parents. Adults blame their childhood. Nations blame history. Everyone searches behind themselves for a reason they cannot change, rather than recognizing the uncomfortable truth that creation only happens now. Admitting this feels terrifying because it removes excuses. It also restores power. This is where many spiritual and philosophical traditions make people uncomfortable. When the idea arises that you are not merely a small, separate self pushed around by forces beyond your control, it feels threatening. It challenges the comfort of victimhood. It challenges the safety of being insignificant. That is why ideas about deeper identity are often resisted, misunderstood, or attacked. They remove the illusion that someone else is in charge. Western culture, especially modern productivity-driven societies, struggles deeply with this. Everything is oriented toward the future. Worth is measured by potential, progress, and outcomes. Something is dismissed as useless if it has no future. But nothing can have a future without first having a present. Plans are made endlessly, yet when those plans succeed, the mind has already moved on to the next thing. Enjoyment is postponed indefinitely. This creates a strange paradox. People work tirelessly for a life they are never present to live. They optimize systems, habits, and schedules, but never question the fundamental assumption that fulfillment exists somewhere other than now. Without presence, success feels empty. Without awareness, achievement feels hollow. Without silence, wisdom never appears. Silence, in this sense, is not passive. It is not withdrawal. It is not escape. It is the condition in which reality can finally be experienced without distortion. When the internal narrator quiets down, even briefly, something remarkable happens. The world stops being an object to analyze and starts being something you participate in. The body feels more alive. Perception sharpens. Emotion becomes clearer. Problems that felt overwhelming lose their psychological weight. This is not about rejecting thinking. Thinking is a useful tool, but it becomes destructive when it never turns off. A hammer is helpful, but not if you carry it everywhere and hit everything with it. Silence restores balance. It reminds you that you are not the voice in your head. You are the awareness listening to it. When this understanding deepens, the need to constantly fix, improve, or justify yourself begins to fade. Not because nothing matters, but because you finally see what actually does. Life is no longer something you are preparing for. It is something you are participating in. And paradoxically, this makes action more effective, not less. The ultimate mistake people make is believing that meaning, peace, and fulfillment will arrive later, once conditions improve. Once they have more money, more clarity, more time, more confidence. But later never arrives. There is only now, endlessly misunderstood and habitually ignored. When you begin to live from this recognition, something subtle but profound shifts. You stop chasing symbols and start valuing experience. You stop defending identities and start inhabiting reality. You stop being driven by fear of the future and regret of the past, and start responding intelligently to what is actually happening. This does not make life perfect. It makes it real. And reality, when met directly, has a way of dissolving illusions without force. Not through effort, but through understanding. Not through control, but through presence. The invitation is simple, but not easy. Pause. Not dramatically, not performatively. Pause internally. Let the constant commentary rest for a moment. Notice what remains when nothing is being explained. That is where life has been waiting for you all along.